Business Expert Forum is proud to present the actor who portrays the most interesting man in the world, Mr. Jonathan Goldsmith.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Have a seat.
Nice to see you
Great
again.
to see you.
They brought you back, huh?
They liked everything we did, and I was going to ask you, why did you decide to come back here?
I like it here. It's the second time I feel like an alumni. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You were a highlight. I mean, when everybody loved you last year, and we were really honored when you agreed to come back. I know you only do very few of these appearances each year, and we're very grateful for you to show up.
Well, I'm delighted to be back. I had a lot of fun last year, and I see some of the same faces on the crew. They're wonderful. And I took a long trip. I've been on Mars for quite a while. So I know he came from California. It's a nice place, but the food is not cracked up to what they advertise.
Well, why don't you tell them the story of how you became the most interesting man in the world?
Well, I'll try to keep it kind of short, and you'd have to ask some other people who might not agree with that, but that's all right. Many people do, and I feel very, very lucky. I've had an interesting life, and I have an interesting story. And you had asked me, what are some of the lessons maybe that I've learned? Maybe I'll share some of those. But after 52 years as an actor, and I did well, I did all right, at least I supported myself. I had gone into the business world briefly, got out of the business world. My hair had turned a little bit gray, and the roles weren't coming in after killing over 350 people and being a general badass. I kind of retired. And I went up to the mountains in the Sierras, and I bought some land. And anyway, things started falling apart for me. I had been out of Hollywood for 10 years, done well in the business world. But I decided that I needed to go back and resurrect a very dead career. Out of sight, out of mind has a new meaning in Hollywood. Nobody knew who I was. And it was a tough time for me. I had a marriage that was dissolving. I left a business because my partner turned out to be less than reputable. And I needed to go back to work. I was in trouble up there. I had a beautiful piece of acreage. I couldn't sell it. And the whole thing because I was being sued by my lovely neighbors because they wouldn't give me an easement. So 1 inch of land, be wary of road associations. So I needed to go back to work. And I got a call one day that they were looking. I had a new agent that was kind enough and remembered me from past to represent me. And she said, they're looking for somebody that is strong in improvisation. I don't know much about it. It pays over scale. And I think that you would be perfect for it. It's a Hemingway-esque type of character. Do you still have your beard? I said, yes. I had it for a long time before this commercial. And she said, I don't know what I can tell you except that you have to do an improvisation, and it ends with a line, and that's how I arm wrestled Fidel Castro. Well, that's simple enough. So I got in my old truck after spending much too much money on lawyers fighting this stupid lawsuit, and I drove down to Los Angeles for this big audition. It was big to me. It was the only one I had had in years and years. And I went into a campground because I actually couldn't afford a motel at the time. And was sitting there. I was sleeping in the back of a shell on an old 65 Ford diesel truck that I loved very much. And I was wondering if I still had it, if I could still put it on, if I could still fool them, if you wish. And off in the distance, I could see the glow of Malibu, the colony, just across the road, the Pacific Coast Highway, where everybody lived that had all the things that I had dreamt about. Success and fame, could do lots of stuff that they believed in. And it seemed impenetrable to me. And I was having this audition in the morning, and I slept rather fitfully that night. In the morning I got up, there was no hot water in the campground. And there's some morals in this that we'll get to later. And I washed with the cold water, no mirror, so I used the broken mirror on my truck to fix my a little fuller hair than now. And I said, well, I don't know, but at least maybe I can make them laugh. Maybe I can make them remember me. And I drove to Hollywood, about 35 miles down the coast. And as I did, it was like a montage of my life. The first place I lived in California, $40 a month over a garage. Another garage that I built when I was working as a carpenter, which fell down the first time the wind blew. I wasn't very adept at anything except survival. In fact, Nick Calasanto, you will remember him as coach on Cheers. We were roommates, and we lived in an abandoned frog farm in the valley. We were house painters, and we never lasted past noon. We always got fired. I saw some of our jobs. I'd say, Nick, what's the difference between enamel and acrylic? He says, I don't know. He said, it looks like it'll work. Put them together. Out. And I saw some of those buildings that I marred, and just thinking all the way to this thing, do I still have it? Can I do this? Can I go through the rejections that caused me to leave the business 10 years before? Anyway, got down to La Brea Avenue, 250, parked the truck in a zone that was going to be a tow away after 4 o'clock, and saw this huge crowd of people, and I looked at them. They all looked like that handsome coffee merchant, Juan Valdez. And I said, they're not looking for me. That I don't have a chance with this. Anyway, I waited and waited and waited, and I called my agent. I says, honey, this is crazy. They're not looking for me. She says, you're a good actor. Stop that. I went out on a limb. Anyway, I finally went in, and all I could think about was my car. My truck was going to get towed away. So it was a room a little bit bigger than this. There was only one person in it, two, casting director and a cameraman. And the director was back in New York. There was a camera up there, and his committee. Everything's done by committee on commercials. The client, the agency, and everybody's got something to say. So finally, it was just my turn, and I was waiting for them to stop talking. And I said, well, think out of the box. And I reached down, and I took my sock off, and just my shoe as well, and I just sat there. And they saw that, and they asked me about it. And I had realized outside I better put on an accent. I mean, these guys all looked like they were from Mexico or Colombia or wherever. So I channeled my dear friend Fernando Lamas, and it's nice to see there are some people that are old enough to remember. Frequently when I tell the story, they don't know who Fernando Lamas was, let alone his wife Esther Williams, but those are more stories. And I said that he's an icebreaker. Anyway, they giggled, they started to ask me about my background, and I started to kind of get a feeling from the questions they were asking me that they wanted to see some disparity. Certainly they were interested in some humor. And they said, tell me about your youth. I said, well, I was brought up here and there. And I used to hang around the Abercrombie gun room. I was really enamored of the big game hunters and the beautiful rifles and the Hemingway tales. And I said, but I was rather torn because even at the age of 9, it was appealing to me to become an OBGYN. So anyway, that kind of silliness, and thank you, they laughed also. And I started spewing more bullshit that you have ever heard in your life. And they were kind enough to laugh, and the more they laughed, the more I went on with this ludicrous story about seeing these women washing in the river, and I went down and, of course, had my way with all of them. One happened to be. Anyway, I finally led to and that's how I arm wrestled Fidel Castro. This story doesn't end there. I got out and I was pissed at my agent. I said, that was a waste of time, Barbara. And she said, don't do that. Don't be negative. You're like every other actor. It can't work. Anyway, I said, don't waste their time, my time. Silly. I got there. My truck was about to be towed. A month went by. They went all around our world and in South America, and they were still searching for this character. So I went back. They called me back, and now I'm gaining on the role. There's maybe only 200 people, not 500. And the same thing went on. And then another month and a half passed. It was a 3-month process. And finally, there was just 2 other fellows and myself. And I was the lucky guy that got it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you. They were looking for a Latino, and they ended up with a Jew from New York. You figure it out.
When you took that sock off, it was just the sock or the shoe and the sock?
Well, I know I took the sock off, and I may not have had taken my shoe off. I'm not sure. But anyway, I know I took the sock off.
Was that scary?
Not at all. Why? Have you seen my feet? They're beautiful. No.
Well, I mean, just to go out on a limb like that, to take a risk like that.
No, because I didn't think I had a chance in the world, and I was just going to do the best I could. And that's always been my motto. Just give it all, You don't know. Think out of the box and go for it. I said, they might not like it, but they will remember the guy without the sock. And they did.
Perfect.
For 9 years.
Perfect. What has been the most important thing you have ever learned?
Oh boy, there's so many, but the thing obviously that you can tell by the story is don't quit. Don't give up. Follow your dreams. A lot of people will try to dissuade you. Life will try to pull you in different directions. I mean, the best expression I can think about is some of my Canadian friends who said, don't let them piss in your cornflakes. It's your cornflakes, It's thank you. I really agree with that. There are so many people that don't want you to be successful because they're afraid, I believe, that you will leave them behind, leave them where they are. So I learned early on not to quit. I remember when I was living with my father. He was working as a gym teacher. He's a very physical, athletic kind of a guy. We used to wrestle, and he'd make believe that I was pinning my father down, who was my hero. And he'd say, just remember, kid, a goldsmith never gives up. And I thought about that, and I thought about how that worked throughout my life. And I never did give up. I could go on for hours, and I'll tell you stories at another time about how difficult an actor's life is and how incredibly fortunate I feel. But it still resonates with me. Don't give up. My God, it's easy to do that. It's so easy to do that. There's such comfort in that, I'm just thinking about this convention, and one of the candidates who is, people are suspicious about the candidate. How can you live years and years and years and not make some mistakes? But the people that survive are the ones that don't give up. And also something else I learned, don't give up on mentoring and taking care and believing in other people. May I tell a story about that? This is one of the things that I firmly believe in. You have to give back. I'm at an age now where I don't even buy green bananas. So it's not that damn funny, is it? But I have a grandson. His name is Chase. Chase was a difficult kid, so was I, but I cared about him. He lived way out on the prairies in Wyoming with one of my daughters. And this kid was just lost. He was a kind of a nerdy kid. His parents were preoccupied with other things, and they kind of pushed him to the side. And he wasn't athletic like his father was. And he was just, didn't have a lot of friends. He was hungry for lots of things. They'd just give him candy and shut him up as they went about their own boring lives. And I cared about this kid. I lived in California. I didn't see him often, but I wanted to see him. And the last time I had seen him, it was a really tough visit. He was a whiner and a terrible crybaby. He was unpleasant to be around. He was constantly needy, constantly testing. And if he didn't get his way, he'd kind of sob and he'd put his head down like that. It was really boring. So I thought a lot about this kid, and I called my daughter and I said, I want Chase to come and stay with us. I lived on a sailboat with my wife. And she says, oh, Dad, you don't have the patience for that. I said, I will make the patience. It was important to me. I said, I will. She said, you'll have to be on a morphine drip. Because the kid never, he's very smart, he's inquisitive, and he never stopped talking and whining and moaning. I said, Carrie, I need to do this, and I will. So Chase came to me, and the first night we're sitting on the sailboat, and he looks very forlorn, and he's about to cry. I says, Chase, what's the matter? He said, Grandpa, I wear diapers. I said, so? And my daughter had tipped me off to the fact that he wet his bed. I said, so what? All guys wet the bed once in a while. Happened to me not too long ago. So he said, really? I said, yeah. And Barbara had put a rubber sheet down for him. And he said, but what if, I said, so what? Big deal. That's what washing machines are for. So he didn't wet the bed, nor did he ever wear diapers again. The week was hell. The week from hell. Grandpa. Yes, Chase, that's a seagull. Grandpa, what's the difference between a dolphin and a porpoise? Chase, I don't know. A week that never stopped with this kid. And I had finally had it. We're at the LA Zoo. And it was a terrific hot day. And here's the kid. He's got an Indiana Jones hat on. He's got a whip from, I don't know what, a sword from Scaramucci. And and he just wants to take the tram because he's covered in sweat, pigeon-toed, floppy and flabby. And I'm so glad that he's going home the next day. But I'll tip you off to his personality. One of these gangster kids covered with tattoos dropped his ice cream. And Chase walked over. He says, you can have this. Nice boy. So, anyway, the day is terrifically hot. He's tired. I'm tired. But it's Grandpa. And finally, it built up, and I said, Chase, damn it, please, give me just 5 minutes without asking me. He said, well, what do you want me to call you, Grandpa? I says, I don't know. Call me fucking Frank. Don't call me Grandpa. He got real teary-eyed, sweating up the hill to the zebras, and I'm standing behind him, and I feel terrible. I blew my cool. I hurt this kid, and finally he turns around to me and very differently raises his hand. He says, fucking Frank. Let me tell you what happened to Chase. I taught him to swim. He went back to Wyoming. The family had trouble. They moved to Utah. He broke almost every record in the state in swimming. It's touching to me. This year, he got the highest marks in America on the Cambridge diet. Not the Cambridge diet, the Cambridge University course. And number one, highest in the whole country. Took him to Washington, took him to meet the president, took him because he deserved it. And I just thought about, if I had given up on this kid, what would have happened? He's on the wrestling team. He plays the trombone. He's going to be 16 next week. Don't give up. Don't give up. Give back. That's what I learned.
Wow.
Thank you.
Beautiful.